crafters, and welcome back to the Crafty Meraki YouTube channel. My name is Deepa from Designs by D, and today I'm showing you how to make this amazingly gorgeous bouquet card. And it's really simple to do. I love quick and easy techniques like this, and this is a really nice way to kind of step up your background. So these are the products that I'm going to be using. I've got the Meraki Moments Sentiments dies, and then I've also got the Flora Wreath Builder dies. I've got some inks there. I'm using alternately, you could use whatever inks that you have on hand. I've got sponge daubers. You're only going to need one of those. And then I've also got some white pigment ink, which is basically the key to creating this effect. Now, on top of this, you are going to need some acetate or vellum, along with some circle hole punches, which are of varying sizes. I'm also using the Crafty Meraki ombre glitter sheets as well to cut out different portions to be used on our card. So first things first, I have a scrap piece of cardstock underneath my A2 sized cardstock panel, and I'm going to just ink blend this up with some kind of tealy, like green toned inks, along with some pinky purples, I'd say. So I started off with the lightest green, which in this case, I think is Mountain Mist or something like that. Then there's Lagoon and Emerald. And I'm just building up the color on this panel. I'm not filling up the entire panel because remember, we're going to come in with some of those pinks and purples. So now I'm coming in with the lightest pink, which is Puffy Heart. And you'll see that when the pink overlaps with like that tealy green, it's not a teal. It's like it's in between the blue and the teal color, right? It looks very green on the screen here, but it is like a bluey green. And you'll see that when the pink overlaps with it, you get a nice deep blue, almost like a purpley color, which I think looks really cool. So I'm just going to go ahead and add the darker pinks, which are Purple Wine and Cosmic Berry. And I'm just mixing the colors here. So we're just creating like a mix of colors on this panel. It looks like a bit of a hot mess, but don't worry, it's all going to come together. If you've done ink blending like this, you know that this is how the panels usually start off, and then in the end they look gorgeous. You could use whatever colors you like. You don't have to stick to the colors I've used. You could even do a galaxy background if you thought that might look cool. With the bouquet effect, it looks even more stunning. So I've pretty much filled this entire panel, but I noticed there are like little sections in the center that are really light. So I'm just taking my blending brushes, which still have a lot of ink on them, and I'm just kind of going over it all to kind of just add a little bit more color in the center there, and then to add more darker colors along the edges. And that's just the way that I like to put down my colors. Now, once that panel is done, you can set it aside for just a second. Grab your piece of acetate or vellum. Now, your panel doesn't have to be as large as mine. It can just be like a smaller piece as long as it's large enough and has a little bit of space around it when you punch your circles. So I'm using 3 different circle punches. There are varying sizes. The largest, I think that's 1.5 inches. Then I've got one, and then like a really small one. It's not the size of a hole punch, but a little bit bigger. And you can see I put them on different areas of that vellum. I tried to punch it as far in as I possibly could, but because of the limitations of some of the punches, I couldn't do it as far in as possible. If you don't have circle punches, you could also use circle dies. So if you have a set of circle dies that kind of go up in size and go to a really small size, those would work here too. And that way you can put them in the center of your vellum or acetate. So as you can see, I've grabbed my sponge dauber, and I'm basically just taking the white and I'm filling in these circles. So I'm just using this as a stencil basically. Now just be careful around the edges because you don't want your white to leak out of the edge because it's kind of close there to the edge of that vellum that we cut it. And also keep in mind that you'll notice that the sponge dauber, though you have the white pigment ink on it, once you put it down on your panel, it's going to pick up some of the color that's underneath. So I'm picking up some of the greens and the pinks there on my sponge dauber. So when I put that back onto my pigment white ink pad, I'm going to get a little bit of contamination and transfer of color, okay? So if this is the case, I would recommend just using like a small portion of your ink pad, or if you have multiple pigment ink pads, if you happen to be lucky to have that, like I do, I kind of leave one of my pigment ink pads for contaminated projects like this, and I'll keep one really crisp. And that's just basically what I'm doing here. So I'm using the ink pad. Even though it looks like it's not really that contaminated, I'll show you my trick to kind of cleaning it off a little bit afterwards. Now, the trick to doing the bokeh effect here is having them overlap and to have the varying sizes of the circles. So you can see I'm kind of just picking and choosing, and I'm doing this one by one. I'm just kind of, overlapping the smaller with the bigger, and so on and so forth, and just seeing how it looks and going with the flow. There's no right or wrong way to do it. However, the two tips that I have is one, make sure that your circles are overlapping, and two, go back over some of those circles and make them a bit more opaque. So add more of that pigment ink on it so that there is a varying degree of opacity in the circles that you're putting down, because when you have more opacity, so it's more white, it looks like that circle is more in the foreground, and when you have less opacity, it looks like that circle is more in the background because it's a little faded. So that little trick, and I recommend you do this very delicately, I'm just grabbing a paper towel. You could use a towel, just like a dry towel instead, and just lightly wipe off. Like, it looks like I'm applying pressure. I'm really not. I'm just rubbing it across the surface of it to just get off any excess contaminated ink. Okay, so that's basically it for the bokeh effect. It's so easy. Look at how simple that was. And you can keep your stencil and do a bunch of backgrounds all in one go. Just do a whole bunch of ink blending of different colors and then come in with the circle stencil that you created with your pigment ink. And then you can get a whole bunch of these backgrounds done in one if you wanted to say if you wanted to mass produce these types of cards. Okay, so I've gone through the ombre glitter paper here, and I'm just trying to find sections of it that I want. So I've used the wreath builder die, and I'm just using one portion of it because I just want that leafy branch there, and I cut it out of the pink portion of the glitter cardstock. And you can see that this cardstock has a bit of a plastic backing. This is why the glitter doesn't go everywhere, right? So this is a good cardstock to have to keep your space clean. However, you do kind of have to pop out your die cut a little bit because of that plastic backing. So now that I've got that done, I also cut out one from green cardstock as well, or a portion of the ombre cardstock that was green. Now for my sentiment, I'm grabbing the Meraki Moments Hey sentiment. I've got the detail portion. Now the fun part about these dies is they're really cool. So you have unfortunately I don't have the original packaging, but you have the detail portion of the die, you have a background and then another background behind that, or you could also use the foil plate for it. So it's up to you what you want to do. So I went ahead and I cut the hay out of some black glitter cardstock. I've grabbed the Lila Meraki Flora dies. Now, I picked this because you can see it's Lily of the Valley and you've got the tiny little flowers. I just wanted those tiny little flowers to kind of break up some of the color that I have going on with all of that pink and green on my background here. So I've cut my panel down to size now. I've got some navy shimmer cardstock, and this is what my background is going to be. So I'll cut the navy shimmer cardstock down to an A2 sized panel. So that's 5.5 by 4.25. And then the bouquet background was cut down to, I think, 5 by 4.75 to allow for a 1/4 inch border around the edge. So I think I cut that and then it was still a little bit large. So I cut it down a little more. Make sure you get everything to size. And you can always cut out any overhanging bits at the end if you want as well. So I've gone ahead and attached the bouquet background to that navy blue background. And I think what I did is I actually sliced off like a little sliver on each side so that I also get a little bit of a white border as well, as you see here. So I'll go ahead and attach that to my A2 size side folding white card base. That took a second to get out. So the A2 size white card base here, it's side folding, but we're using it in a landscape position here. So it's kind of like like it's top folding. So now I can actually organize these two leaf fronds on my card base. I mean, sorry, on my card. So I've just added some glue and I've attached the green one and the pink one on top, kind of like in a flourish position there. I noticed that when I put the hay sentiment on there, it just didn't look right to me. So I went ahead and I grabbed the background die there. Um, I grabbed the shadow die for this and I cut it out of some vellum. So I'll go ahead and attach the HEY onto the vellum there. And I feel like that just gives it a little bit more of the base. And it also allows you to place the letters on so that they're in the exact right position rather than trying to figure it out one by one when you just have the detailed portion of the letters. And I'm sorry if I'm confusing you. I always kind of use the word like the detailed portion as like the smallest die, like the portion that the die cuts out, which is the smallest, which would be the actual hay sentiment. And then you've got the shadow die, which is the one behind that. And then you get the second shadow die, which is the one behind that. So when I say detailed portion, I mean what cuts out the actual sentiment. So I've gone ahead and I've attached those letters to the vellum. I've also added some foam adhesive strips onto the sentiment here, and I'm going to attach this right in the center of that kind of glitter frond flourish we've created. Now the next step is to kind of break up all of this pink and green with some white, just like we did in the background, right? Like the white circles of the bouquet effect kind of break up all of that pink and green and purple. And here we're going to do the same thing. So I'm just grabbing some of these lily of the valley, so the lila dies, those little flowers, and I'm just attaching them on this frond to kind of break it up a little bit and just add a bit of a floral element as well. I thought it was a little too plain without flowers, of course. So I'm not doing anything too special here. I'm just attaching these with some liquid adhesive. And I find that when you make backgrounds like this is kind of like the way to go. So I always kind of like my recipe for doing this is to create a really nice background. If I don't want to cover up much of it, I will just put the sentiment on it and maybe like a small die cut here and there. Otherwise, I will do something like this where I find the die cuts really complement the ink blending and stamping really well. So I felt like the hay on its own was a little too aggressive. So I went and I grabbed the Meraki Moments Hello stamp set. And sorry, my head gets in the way here. I grabbed that stamp set and I'm actually just placing the friend sentiment down there. I'm using the Misty stamping tool here because it just really helps considering I've already put everything on top of the card. I stamped that out with some VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink. And now my final step is to add some bling. So I'm just adding some glue dots here with my liquid glue, and I'm adding some Meraki Twilight Illusion here. So these gems have like a yellowy pinkish tone to it, and I just thought that they sparkle so nicely with the colors that we have going. I thought the yellow would pick up the green, and of course the pink will pick up the pink. So that's the final card. I hope that this technique, the bouquet technique, will be something you try in your card making. And everything that I've used is linked in the description down below. Don't forget to check out the Crafty Meraki store. There's a link down there. And I hope to see you guys next Sunday. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.